I want to start by telling you something that most people who know me now would never believe. I was not a good kid. Not a, got in a few fights, kind of not good. Not a, talked back to teachers, kind of not good. I mean genuinely, deeply, structurally bad. The kind of kid that parents pulled their children away from on the street. The kind of kid that small business owners watched from behind the counter when I walked in. I started smoking at 11. I was shoplifting by 12. By 13, I had made adults physically afraid of me, and I want to be honest, I liked it. Power. That's the only word for it. It's heavy. It's absolute. When you grow up feeling invisible, powerless, overlooked, you start to wonder if you even exist. And then suddenly you discover that fear gives you presence. That's a drug. A real one. Better than anything you can buy. I could feel the air change when I entered a room. Heavy. Still. Like a storm about to break. I owned that silence. And I was completely addicted to the feeling of people stepping aside when I walked down a hallway. I fed on it. It wasn't just about the fear. It was about finally being seen. I was 17, and I was a king of my own dark kingdom. My crew was 5 of us. Thick as blood. Tighter than family, or so I told myself. We were a pack. Bound by the dark. We fed each other's worst instincts for years. Dared each other further and further past lines that decent people don't cross. Lines that once crossed, you never find your way back from. I won't catalog every sin here. Some things are better left in the shadows. I've made amends where I could, to who I could. And I carry the weight of the rest. That's mine to keep. A burden I earned every single day. But you didn't click for confession. You didn't come for an apology. You clicked for the story. So here it is. This is the moment where the world started to shift. When I was 16, my parents, people I had put through more than parents should ever have to endure, finally made a decision that saved my life. Despite screaming matches. Despite things thrown. It was a war zone I created. Despite behavior I will not describe because it still fills me with a shame that I have earned, I carry it every day. They found a school for troubled youth and they sent me there. The world as I knew it was ending. No phone. No visits. No outside world. Just the silence. Just the program, the counselors, and myself. It was finally time to look in the mirror. I call it a school loosely. What it really was a mirror. It forced me to look at the one thing I was running from. Held up by men who had zero interest in your excuses and infinite patience for your growth. They were unshakable. Men who had seen every version of broken and knew exactly which questions to ask until the armor started coming off. I fought it for months. Screamed. Refused. Made myself a daily problem because that's all I knew how to do. It was all I had left. And slowly, piece by piece, they took it apart. They didn't stop until the walls were finally down. It was the first time I really saw myself. And for the first time, I wasn't afraid. My counselor was named Jay. I hated him for the first 6 months with the specific intensity that you only hate someone who sees you clearly. By the end of my 14 months there, I considered him a second father. He was the one who told me I was ready to go home. And he said it like he meant it, not like a discharge, like a graduation. I wasn't just leaving, I was moving forward. I came back different. Quieter. Steadier. Still nervous, still figuring out who I was without the performance. But the bone was healing. Different in the way that a bone healed clean is different from one that never broke at all. Stronger at the fracture. I was ready. My friends accepted me back immediately. One of the 5 had moved state while I was gone. The remaining 3, F1, F2, and F3, were genuinely happy to see me. Hugs and everything. The old warmth was there, and for a few weeks, I let myself feel it. It felt like home again. My parents were testing the ground carefully, and I respected that. For the first time, I understood what I had cost them. I was done taking. I followed the rules. Joined the football team, same team all three of them were on. Kept my head down. I was finding my place. I was building something. Something real. And for the first time in a long time, I was proud of it. Everything was going right. Until it wasn't. One evening after practice, the four of us were the last ones left. F1 started talking about a college party. Easy access to older girls, free alcohol. I said I couldn't because of curfew, and they rode me for it, called me soft. Then F1 mentioned a quiet girl from our school. He'd been trying to get her attention for months. He had this smile on his face I didn't like. Then he said the sentence that stopped time. Calm as you please, he said he was going to slip something in her drink to loosen things up. I laughed nervously. I looked at F2 and F3. Neither of them looked shocked. They looked like they had heard this before. I asked F1 if he was serious. He said yes. Said he was done waiting. Said it like her no was just an inconvenience. I knew I had to move. I left. Made some excuse and got out of there as fast as my legs would take me. Drove home on autopilot, I still don't remember the route. Sat in my car in the driveway for 20 minutes before I could make myself go inside. I was looking for a reason to doubt what I'd heard. Told myself it was bravado. Told myself he was performing for the group. Told myself I knew this person. People like that don't do things like this. I was wrong about the last part. A few days later, in the same locker room, F1 reached into his bag and tossed a small zip bag to F2. Little pink pills. I felt the floor shift under me. This was real. This was physical. This was no longer a conversation I could talk myself out of. F1 walked through the plan. Clinical. Detailed. F2 and F3 listening and nodding like they were planning a road trip. I felt a cold, specific, absolute clarity. I knew what I had to do. But being 17, I made two mistakes. The first was confronting F1 alone and telling him to call it off. He laughed in my face. Told me the school had made me weak. Then he said something about my mother. I hit him. He hit back. We both got sent home on suspension. That was mistake one. I was down, but I wasn't out. The real move was still coming. Sitting in my room that night while my mother cried and my father paced, I made the second mistake. I still didn't tell them what I knew. I had this 17-year-old delusion that I was going to handle it myself. That I could outmaneuver this without burning the friendship entirely. I know. Don't say it. But hear me out, because this is the part where it turns. I had 1 week before the party. So I did 3 things. The first thing I did was go back to school and apologize to F1. Told him the school had messed with my head. Told him he was right. I'd be at the party. He bought it. They all did. And I stood there hugging this person who had told me what he was planning to do to an innocent girl. And I felt nothing except the cold clarity getting colder. The second thing I did was start recording. Every single time the 4 of us were alone and the party came up, I had my phone running in my pocket. 3 days of this. F1 talking about the pills. Describing the plan in detail specific enough to make a prosecutor's eyes light up. F2 and F3 confirming they knew. All of it. Saved. Backed up. The third thing I did was the most important. I found the girl. Pulled her aside between classes, told her I needed 2 minutes of her time, and then told her everything. I watched her face change. Watched the color leave. She was shaking by the time I finished. I told her she needed to stay home. I told her I had recordings. I told her that I was going to handle it. That she was safe. And for the first time, I meant it. The night of the party I snuck out, still grounded, because I needed to be there. Not to participate. To watch. To make sure F1 didn't pivot his plan to anyone else when his target didn't show. I nursed one beer all night and stayed in his eye line without being obvious about it. F2 and F3 drank heavily. F1 drank heavily. He kept checking the door. Kept getting more agitated as the night stretched and she didn't arrive. He was losing control. Midnight came. The crowd thinned. All three of them were properly gone by then. They had done themselves. I hadn't touched a thing. I watched F1 fall asleep in a chair and I felt something unclench in my chest. The worst was over. But the work was just beginning. Then I did the last petty thing. The one I'm not entirely proud of but am not entirely sorry for either. I had a thick black permanent marker in my jacket that I had put there deliberately. I uncapped it. And on the foreheads of all three of my former best friends, the boys I had grown up with, fought beside, called my brothers, I wrote one word. Each. The accurate word. Then I photographed it and posted it to our school's social page before the three of them could sleep it off. And then I went home and woke my father up. I sat at the kitchen table and I told him everything. From the locker room to the pills to the recordings to what I had just done. He didn't say a single word until I was finished. Then he looked at me for a moment that I will remember until I die. And then he said, "Get your shoes." We drove to the police station at 1 a.m. The recordings did what I needed them to do. F1's voice, his specific plan, laid out in his own casual certainty for anyone with ears to hear. The girl's parents were furious in that righteous, terrifying way. She confirmed that I had warned her. That mattered more than I can tell you. I was cited for the marker incident. A fine. Community service. Things I deserved. F1 was charged as an adult. He served time. F2 and F3 received probation and were completely destroyed socially. Pulled from the team. Quietly vanished from every circle they had. I was prepared for retaliation. For them to come for me. It never happened. I think watching F1 actually go away was the cold water they needed. What I miss sometimes is the version of them that existed before all this. The kids I grew up with. Those kids are gone. I don't know what's going to happen with F1 once he gets out of jail, but a part of me hopes he learns his lesson and moves on with his life like I have. Jay called me a few days ago just to check up. And I told him this whole story, which is kind of why I'm telling the internet now. If I take anything from all of this, it's not the revenge. The marker on the foreheads, that was just the 17-year-old in me needing to win. The Real win was quieter. The Real win was a girl who got to stay home safe that night because someone chose to say something instead of staying silent. The Real win was my father putting his shoes on at 1 a.m. without hesitation because his son finally came to him. That was the moment. I guess the moral is to stand up to your friends. But I was 17 and I figured it out eventually. Good enough. Alright. So my boy has been on me for 3 weeks straight to tell this story. 3 weeks. Every shift, every lunch break, every parking lot conversation after work, bro, you have to post this. So here we are. I'm sitting in my kitchen, second glass of red wine, nowhere to be tomorrow, and honestly, I'm finally ready to talk about it. Let me set the scene for you. I'm 26. She's 25. We'd been together 4 years, the kind of 4 years that feel like a whole lifetime. We had a dog named Roscoe, a joint streaming account, a shared Google Calendar. We were that couple. The couple other couples looked at and either felt inspired or annoyed, no in between. She was a graphic designer. Freelance, building a name for herself, genuinely talented. I say that with no bitterness because it's just true. I was in sales. Doing well. Comfortable. We were building something real, or so I believed with every fiber of my incredibly naive soul. Now. Her biggest client, and I mean the client, the one who paid for our kitchen renovation, was this creative director named Marcus. Early 30s, always dressed like a cologne ad. The kind of guy who calls his car the machine. I'd met him twice at company events. Shook his hand. Laughed at his jokes. Offered him a drink at our housewarming. I want you to really sit with that for a second. The work trip started becoming more frequent. Quick overnights to pitch meetings. Weekend brand retreats that she explained away with a level of confident detail that should have been a red flag in itself. Liars don't hedge, they over-explain. And she was giving me PowerPoint presentations for why she'd be gone Friday through Sunday. I noticed the energy shift before anything else. She stopped being irritated by my little quirks, the things that used to make her roll her eyes. Suddenly she had no reaction to anything I did. Not the good kind of acceptance. The kind of unbothered that only exists when someone has found somewhere else to put their feelings. Roscoe noticed before I did, by the way. Dog started sleeping on my side of the bed exclusively. Animals know. Remember that. The confirmation came in the form of a forgotten laptop. She left it home on a Thursday, texted me asking if I could email her a file. I opened it. I found the file. I also found a folder she definitely did not intend for me to find. I won't get into specifics. What I will tell you is that I closed that laptop very gently, poured myself an extremely tall glass of water. Sat down on the kitchen floor, and did not move for about 45 minutes. Roscoe came and sat next to me. Good boy. Now here's where most people either blow up the phone, confront immediately, or spiral. I did none of those things. I made a decision, quietly, completely, and with the kind of cold clarity that only hits you when something truly breaks inside you. I decided that she would not know. Not yet. I had 3 weeks. 3 weeks before our engagement party, which her parents were throwing for us, which Marcus had RSVP'd yes to. Which 200 people were planning to attend on a Saturday evening in a ballroom that her father had already paid a deposit on. You see where this is going. The first thing I did was call my older sister. She's a paralegal. I told her everything. She didn't say, "Are you sure?" She didn't say, "Maybe there's an explanation." She said, and I quote, "Okay, what do you need?" That's real love right there. Save yourself for a person who has an older sister like mine. The second thing I did was call our landlord and confirm that only my name was on the lease. It was. Because I'd handled the paperwork. Because I always handled the paperwork. The third thing, and this is the part that required real patience, was nothing. I did absolutely nothing. I went to dinner with her. I watched TV with her. I talked about centerpiece options for the wedding. I laughed at her jokes. I was warm and present and completely unreadable, which is the greatest acting performance of my entire life. Meanwhile I was moving. Quietly. Methodically. I spoke to a real estate agent and found an apartment, just mine. I set up a separate account with the savings I had come into the relationship with. I told my 2 closest friends what was happening. And then I called her mother. Her mother, Barbara, had become genuinely close to me over 4 years. Real mother-in-law warmth. She called me on my birthday. She sent me soup when I had a bad flu. She was a good woman who, like me, had no idea what her daughter was doing. I didn't call Barbara to burn the relationship down. I called Barbara because what I was about to do at that party affected her finances directly. She deserved the truth before it became a public scene. I gave it to her straight, with evidence, and I let her respond however she needed to. She was silent for a long time. Then she said, "I am so sorry, sweetheart." And then she said, "Do what you have to do." Green light. Everything was set. The night of the engagement party I got dressed in the best suit I own, charcoal, slim cut, the one she picked out for me in Milan. I showed up early. I was charming. I greeted every guest. I had a drink in my hand and a smile that could have sold insurance. Marcus arrived at 7:15. He shook my hand. Looked me in the eye. Called me, brother. I smiled and offered him a drink. Because I'm a professional. My sister had prepared a short printed letter, 2 paragraphs, factual, with one of the photos from the folder. Enough to be clear. Not enough to be cruel. There were 40 envelopes. 1 for each table. We distributed them during cocktail hour. While the couple of honor was taking photos outside with the photographer. At 8 o'clock the guests were seated. The stage was set. At 8 o'clock the guests were seated. The room was buzzing with the kind of energy you only find at the start of something big. At 8:07 her father stood to give the welcome toast. He was smiling, proud, completely unaware of the envelopes waiting at every table. At 8:09 I heard the first murmur from the room as people opened their little envelopes, because my sister had written, "Please open before the toast," on the outside. In beautiful calligraphy. She's an overachiever. I love her for it. The sound of 200 people realizing the truth at the exact same time is something I will never forget. A heavy, weighted silence. By the time the happy couple walked in from their photo session at 8:14, the room was very quiet in a very specific way. Marcus, to his credit, read the room in about 4 seconds and made a decision that was honestly impressive. He just quietly picked up his jacket from the back of his chair and left. No scene. No statement. Just gone. I respect the self-preservation instinct even in people I cannot stand. I walked to the microphone. I thanked Barbara for the beautiful venue. I thanked every guest for coming. I said that unfortunately the engagement was over effective immediately, and that anyone who'd like to join me for drinks at the bar down the street was absolutely welcome. About 60 people came. It was actually a fantastic night. The end of one thing, the beginning of another. She moved out within the week because she had to, her name wasn't on the lease. It was a quick, quiet departure. The silence that followed was different. It wasn't empty, it was a relief. A clean break from a life that was built on a lie. Roscoe stayed with me because she didn't contest it, which tells you everything. He knew where he belonged long before I did. Last I heard, the Marcus situation quietly dissolved about 2 months later. Turns out he had a version of our situation running on his end too. Funny how that works. Betrayal is a cycle, and sometimes, it just completes itself without any help from you.